The grand finals in the doubles category have now concluded for the Phoenix Festival tournament, and we have a champion pair to crown. We also have the results of round 4 in the singles category and teams category to go over, but I'll go over those after the grand finals results. Now, in day 1 of the grand finals, we had Tyrion Callows and Ruby Rose winning against Cinderfall and James Ironwood. And we also had Crow Bronwyn and Pyranikos winning against Mercury Black and Raven Bronwyn. In day 2, we had, once again, Crow and Pyra taking a victory over Cinder and Ironwood, and we had Tyrion Callows and Ruby Rose winning against Glinda Goodwitch and Sun Wukong. In day 3, we had Crow and Pyra continuing their winning streak, this time winning against Glinda and Sun, and we had Mercury and Raven winning against Cinderfall and James Ironwood. And in day 4, we had Mercury and Raven winning against Glinda and Sun, and Crow and Pyra once again winning against Tyrion Callows and Ruby Rose. And in the last day of the grand finals, we had Tyrion and Ruby winning against Mercury Black and Raven Bronwyn, and Cinderfall and James Ironwood winning against Glinda Goodwitch and Sun Wukong. So the final standings are: in 5th place, we had Glinda and Sun going 0-4. With how powerful Glinda's semblance is, they would give a lot of trouble to any of the teams that they fought against. But with so many of the opponents being very fast and skilled fighters, they would be able to overwhelm Glinda, be able to get around her semblance. A lot of people were saying that though the semblance is tricky, if they work it correctly, knowing what Glinda's semblance is, having the ability to build their teamwork, knowing what their opponents are doing throughout the different matches, they would be able to overwhelm them eventually. Sun, unfortunately, would be a bit of a hindrance at times, but Glinda and Sun, although very skilled, did end up in 5th place in this tournament. In our 4th place spot, we have Cinderfall and James Ironwood. Definitely a strong team, but Cinder, having relied mostly on her maiden powers after receiving them in Volume 3, the full maiden powers at least, she's going to be held back a little bit. She's still very skilled at fighting when it comes to using her Midnight and her semblance of Scorching Caress, especially getting the desert biome as much as she does, but her opponents would still be able to overwhelm her. With the skill and speed that the other teams that ranked ahead of her have, they would be able to overwhelm both Ironwood and Cinder. If we ever find out what Ironwood's semblance is, hopefully for Volume 8, then maybe if this pair, or if Ironwood is paired with someone else equally as skilled as Cinder, then the results may turn out differently. In our 3rd place, we have Mercury Black and Raven Bronwyn. Definitely a very stacked team, but their skill and speed was still a bit outmatched based on their opponents that ranked higher than them. With the ferocity and teamwork that some of the teams showed, Tyrion and Ruby, Crow and Pyra, for example, as well, even though Raven is on a similar level as Crow, we had the exhibition match between Crow and Raven where Crow would be able to use his misfortune. Raven wouldn't be able to take advantage of her kindred link that much, especially when, she doesn't have that kindred link to Mercury, and using it against Crow may not prove that effective, as Crow is very aware of what her semblance is, etc. So Mercury and Raven take our 3rd place spot. And of course, I'm guessing you all know the results from here, as in our 2nd place spot we have Tyrion Callows and Ruby Rose, and the grand champions of the doubles category is Crow Bronwyn and Pyranikos. Tyrion and Ruby, Crow and Pyra, I would argue that they are fairly equally skilled teams, if not possibly Tyrion and Ruby being slightly more so, with Ruby having the training from the Aesops and being on par, possibly even a bit above Pyra as she was in Volume 3. But with Crow and Pyra's skill combined with Crow's misfortune affecting their opponents, as well as Pyra's polarity being able to affect all of the metal that any opponent would have, they are just a very powerful team, and it is honestly no surprise that they did end up winning, because they did have a bit of things stacked in their favor. If a fight like this was ever to take place in the RWBY series, it could go a number of different ways, but Pyra's polarity is just very highly valued when it comes to what she is able to manipulate. Even though she isn't able to manipulate things with precision until she touches them, just being able to pulse the magnetism and push opponents back. Tyrion and the Queen's servants and his metal tail, Ruby and her scythe, as well as the other weapons that opponents have. Honestly, it would be Glinda Goodwitch that would give them the most trouble, because Pyra would have nothing to manipulate on Glinda. But with the skill and speed that Crow and Pyra have, they were able to take out and outmatch all of their opponents, and this was really fun to see all of the different descriptions and analyses that people were giving for the doubles category, and we have many more matches to go over into the singles and teams category yet to come. So this concludes concludes the doubles category with our grand champions being Crow and Pyrrha. Second place going to Tyrion and Ruby. Third place to Mercury and Raven. Fourth place to Cinder and Ironwood. And fifth to Glinda and Sun. So hopefully you guys enjoyed all of these matches and are looking forward to the ones in the future. But now we move on to the results of round 4 in the singles category. We had Bartholomew Oobleck winning against Sun Wukong. Sun just isn't at the level of a fully trained huntsman just yet. Oobleck with his speed and experience as well as using his flamethrower, which is a fairly tricky weapon to keep up with. Oobleck does take the win. And then we had Lai Ren using his speed to win against Banesaw. We also had Fox Alistair once again winning against Bertilac Celadon. Bertilac, although being a fully fledged huntsman and his semblance of heat generation, Fox would still be able to outmatch him with speed, and with what we know from their match in Before the Dawn, Fox would end up winning again according to majority vote. We also had Harriet Bree outspeeding Roman Torchwick and knocking him out of the tournament. So we have Roman knocked out, Bertilac knocked out, Banesaw and Sun also knocked out of the tournament. And then in day 3, we had Vine Zeki winning against Gira Belladonna, and Yang Xiaolong taking out her teammate, winning against Weiss Schnee. Yang just being able to overwhelm Weiss, preventing her from summoning, and with them knowing each other's abilities so well, Yang would be able to counter Weiss's better than Weiss would be able to counter Yang's, and so Yang actually knocks Weiss out of the tournament along with Gira Belladonna. And then in day 4, we have Hazel Reinhardt winning against Sienna Khan, and we have Clover Ebby winning against Nora Valkyrie. Just a power difference when it comes to Hazel and Sienna. Sienna not being as fast as, other characters who were able to outspeed Hazel and prevent him from hitting them at all. Sienna would be able to take a few hits, or would end up taking a few hits from Hazel and be knocked out, and Clover Ebby just has the speed experience to outmatch Nora, and so Nora and unfortunately Sienna Khan are knocked out of the tournament. And then in day 5 of the singles category, we had Adam Toros taking out the general of the Atlas military. With his speed being able to use Ironwood's attacks to charge up his semblance, he would be able to overwhelm Ironwood and take him out in this fight. And then we had Blake Belladonna being able to win against Emerald Sustrai by preventing her from using her semblance and being able to outspeed her, and with the skill that she's gained from the training in the Aesops, Blake knocks out Emerald, and so James Ironwood is also eliminated. So not as many matches took place in round 4 of the singles category, but that just means we are getting closer to the end of the tournament and only the stronger competitors remain. And this is definitely apparent by some of the matches that will be taking place in round 5 this week. As we have Marrow versus Crow, we have a little spat between Team Coffee with Coco Adele versus Fox Alistair. We also have Tyrion Kalos versus Pyrrha Nikos. We have Velvet Scarlatina versus Yang Xiaolong. We have Penny Paulindina versus Neapolitan. That one's going to be interesting. Penny keeping to the air, making it hard for Neo to hit her, and with Neo's illusions, etc., this could turn out very interesting. We also have Ruby Rose going up against Hazel Reinhardt. That's kind of unfortunate for Ruby, but we'll see how that ends up playing out. We also have Ozpin fighting against Talk. This is going to be an interesting fight to see. Ozpin, with his massive amounts of experience, doesn't really mean much when Talk doesn't have to worry about defense, just activating her semblance. And she has a fair amount of speed as well, so we'll see how that plays out. And we also have Adam Toros versus Winter Schnee. So many different matches to look forward to in the singles category, and they're only going to get better from here as we are getting closer and closer to the grand finals of the singles category. But now we move on to the results of the teams category in round 4 of the Phoenix Festival tournament, with match 1 having Team Dark win against Team Funky. Team Dark's experience and the skill that they have just outmatches Team Funky. If we knew about Ivory and Cobalt Semblance and had confirmation on Neon Semblance, if it was maybe a speed type semblance, if it was those rainbows that were trailing behind her in Volume 3, then that would be a bit more, or give them more of a chance against Team Dark, but Team Dark would just be able to overwhelm them in this fight. And then we had Team Coffee winning against Team Ambit. Team Coffee just has more skill than Team Ambit as a whole, though Adam would give them a lot of trouble, but Team Coffee would be able to use their semblances and their skills to be able to overwhelm Team Ambit and would take the victory in this fight. We then had Team Haze winning against against Team Silver. Team Silver is a very versatile and experienced team, but Team Haze, with the semblances that they have, their experience being the Aesop's, the most skilled huntsmen in Atlas, or at least some of them, they would be able to overwhelm Team Silver and would end up winning that fight. We then had Team Esprit winning against Team Burns, as Esprit is a pretty stacked team, having pretty much the highest ranking members of the Atlas military, the Kingdom of Atlas really as a whole, with, you know, Clover, Penny, Ironwood, and Winter onto that team. It's hard to beat, but Team Burns would give them a lot of trouble with the speed that they have, and the illusion semblances, and being able to combat them in a number of different ways. But Team Esprit would just win out based on experience, skill, etc. And then we had a very close match between Team Sun and Team Midnight, with it being the closest we've had to a draw. And I'm highly considering maybe calling it a draw, though Team Midnight did win out very slightly in the voting, receiving 48% of the votes, whereas Team Sun received 46%. So Team Midnight did very slightly win out over Team Sun, with their skill being experienced and graduated huntsmen from Atlas Academy, plus being at the top of their class. They likely have a lot of skill in battle. Team Sun is very skilled in their own right. There are still some unknowns about the team, such as Sage's semblance and more of their fighting style, etc., but they don't have exactly the best team cohesion, whereas the Happy Huntresses do, and the Happy Huntresses, Team Midnight would be able to win out in the end, it seems, even just very slightly. And then we had Team Stark defeating Team Witch. Team Witch is very skilled in their own right, being the members of Salem's Inner Circle, with Tyrion Kalos, Hazel Reynard, as well as Cinder Fall, and then Watts being able to choose the most opportune biomes for each of the members of his team. I thought that Team Witch would defeat Team Stark, but a lot of people have faith in Team Stark's abilities. Cinder wouldn't be able to use her maiden powers, which, if the fight were to take place in the RWBY series, it would probably go very differently. But with Team Stark, Crow and Raven's abilities, Raven having her Kindred Link, being able to create portals to all of her team and use their skills and combat abilities in that fashion. We don't know Summer and Ty's abilities. They are a step below Raven and Crow because we don't know their abilities. We know that they're likely on the same level, but we can't analyze them at the same level because of, well, we don't know their weapons, we don't know their fighting styles or their semblances, etc. And because of that, I figured Team Witch would be able to win against Team Stark, but a lot of people choose otherwise. We then had Team Goop winning against Team Ashbury. Team Ashbury, with Sienna Khan and Gira Belladonna, as well as Ilya and Kali, does have a fair bit of skill, but Team Goop, being the headmasters and professors of Beacon Academy, they are just more skilled, would be able to overwhelm them, and Glinda, with her semblance of telekinesis, would be a lot for Team Ashbury to keep up with, and Team Goop would just end up winning. And then we had Team RWBY winning against Team Juniper. The rival teams from the beginning of the RWBY series, Team RWBY just has more skill and ability, it seems, than Team Juniper would be able to win out against them. Both of these teams know each other's abilities, their semblances, their weapons, fighting styles, etc. very well, but Team RWBY has always seemed to be a slight step ahead. They do have, with Team Juniper, Pyrrha and Nikos, which would cause a lot of trouble for Team RWBY, and there were a lot of people thinking that, well, Team Juniper might have a chance at winning as well, but it seems that Team RWBY does take the victory in this match. So these are the results of round 4 of the Phoenix Festival Tournament and the results of the Grand Finals. Make sure you guys go and check out the trailers for Team Dark, created by Raxacory, and Team Silver, created by Mark Zhang. I'll leave a link in the description below to those, and hopefully you guys will be looking forward to round 5 of the Phoenix Festival Tournament. A lot of exciting matches to go over in the singles category, more to look forward to in the teams category, so make sure to subscribe to keep up with all of that. Join the Guild of the Eternal Flame. Tweet me at PhoenixKnight7, join our Discord server linked in the description below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.